Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game. I've been hoovering this up the past couple of days and we've done a couple of sort of opinion piece videos where I've pretty clearly let slip my opinion on a lot of topics, at least surrounding the game, but this gives me an opportunity to delve a little bit deeper. Also, format-wise, we've flip-flopped around and I've discussed with the community. Everyone's getting a lot more vocal, for better or for worse, and in my Discord as well. I'm bringing back my $5 to 1 exchange. We can talk about it in more videos to come, but generally speaking, for me personally, if I give a game $5 Australian, that is, and it gives me an hour of good solid fun, I call that a win for me, for where I'm at with my life, etc. Everyone's going to have a different number. That's not really the point, but they're the grounds on which I approach a game and hang it up before I burn myself out. So Tales of the Shire is going for just under $50 Australian, which to me is 10 hours. I've put 10 hours in. And what do I think? I think it's excellent. I really, really enjoyed my game. And there goes half the viewers because they're radicalized or have agendas or they're just angry that I'm not saying the thing I'm supposed to say. But if you stick around a little bit longer, I'll explain what it is that I really, really like about it. Also, it's as good a time as any. We're experimenting over the course of this month where I'm asking people to sub to the channel. I've never really done it before. I'm getting an explosive amount of subs just by asking. So if you enjoy what I'm doing here on the channel and you aren't already, then subscribing would be wonderful. And further to that, there are links below if you want to become a channel member for pure patronage. I don't give you anything. I don't offer anything. You can't buy me. But if you do want to throw a bit of extra money my way in support, that would be greatly appreciated. And another addendum, like I said, I'm not really interested in talking about the dramas around this. I already talked about this in another video, so it's there. I'm not hiding from it. I just don't want it to clog up this. So what is this game? Is a very good question. And I would tell you primarily it is a cooking game. That's pretty much the main core loop, is all feeding into a cooking system, in and out, I suppose. If the sort of nexus point of where the gameplay goes and comes from, it's all about what you're doing in the kitchen. And that goes from foraging for, spices and mushrooms and hazelnuts and fishing for, obviously fish, or even trading with the local farmers. It doesn't quite go into the full-scale life sim that you might think or expect. You are just your little dude and your scope is only so much. So a lot of things like if you want to get milk or dairy or meat beyond fish, you actually trade at the farmer's market with the other farmers that handle their corner of the village, which I think is really clever. It's good because it actually places restrictions on the player. And as I sort of alluded to, it's like you're a slice of the community, your own little pie slice, and you play within your scope. And I personally found that to add to the feeling of community, because there's a lot of missions that rotate around very cleverly, by the way. The idea that you're in this town called Bywater, which is sort of adjacent, a bit of a baby suburb of Hobbiton, as best as I can understand. And the core drive of everything in this game is that your village is trying to get acknowledged as a village, right? And so there's checklists and things to do, and, it unites all the people from the different corners of the village to come together and sort of work through their differences for the greater good of the village, right? It's not exactly saving the world, Lord of the Rings stuff, but I think it's actually incredibly clever. However, this is going to miff a lot of the target audience, which would be people that like these life sim type games, right? They're probably used to the God mode adjacent power trip of being able to do every single possible thing, possible, right? So the scope of this is narrow, but I feel that it's intentionally so. I'm not trying to carry water for it, and I'm not a huge life sim person because I find that shit to be very overwhelming a lot of the time. But I also found for my 10 hours, I was pretty much flat out. I always had something to do. It was a healthy amount of stress that you can put upon yourself, mostly revolving around cooking meals for people. I will address this cozy term. I fucking hate it. I refuse to use it. To me, it is a red flag. And you watch, give it a little bit more time, it's going to get worse and worse. People who enjoy life sims don't strictly have overlap with these guys that want to call everything cozy. And if you dig through all the controversy and all the different forums and blah, blah, blah that's going on, you're going to have this subsection of these cozy mentality type people that want dating and sex and all that sort of stuff in these games. This is a game for children. It's very obvious from the art style. You know, you don't need dating and sex in a Lego Star Wars game. You don't need it in this game. And I find these people being so socially unaware and self-aware of themselves, trying to beg for this stuff to be added to be in poor taste. A lot of the villagers you interact with are kind of like children as well. It's not easy to tell, you know, they're just smaller versions of the other hobbits, but, you know, they carry like bloody teddy bears and stuff like that and talk about gathering mushrooms. Like, I think the way it is at the moment, where it is focused purely on wholesome and village relationships, is perfect. That's what you want. So these sex pest cozy types that want romance in video games can piss off to some other game. Fortunately, it doesn't have any of that stuff in here. Also, I touched on art style as well. That's another thing, a low-hanging fruit. I think a lot of people are grabbing for it because they're piling on this game. This game's got its own controversies and problems, and that's fine. Kick it for what it's worth. But art-wise, I think it's really pretty and cool, and it's doing stuff that you can't do with ultra-realism. You know, this sort of abstracted, colourful palette that does look like something leaping straight off the pages of like an illustrated children's book. There is something about the perspectives and the way that the towns are constructed and the weaving and winding, and you're getting the sort of village square, which is a lot of boroughs all tied together, and you're moving through them and around them, and it's just really wonderfully well designed. And I do feel like some people are just forgetting themselves and reveling in the glory of trying to kick a game while it's down. Don't get me wrong, this game's gonna flop. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I played it, and for my part, I'll shout out my enthusiasm for it, but they made some terrible decisions that have doomed it to a pretty bad destination. But that can be true, but at the same time, just jumping on it because it's an art style that you don't personally like for a children's game that aimed at an audience that's not you. I mean, come on, we're learning more about you than the game there. But I think it's really quite pretty. I like the art style a lot. The other thing people were piling on about was voice acting not being in it. And again, I feel like you're being disingenuous at a certain point. It doesn't need voice acting. What are you really asking for? You want the same half dozen voice actors that do fucking everything in the West now? You want these kids to be voiced by these 30-year-old women putting on infantile affixes yet again? This goes much more for a Simlish inflection type thing, right? And you know what? It conveys tone, and the reading's not exactly super heavy duty. In fact, it's very cool. It's very Saturday morning cartoon, dealing with pretty basic themes of getting along with your neighbor. I think it's quite perfect the way it is. And you weaken your position when you sort of just pile on the low-hanging fruit. But anyway, look, the core of it's cooking, and it has some mini games involved. Discovering them as you go along the way is part of the fun. I don't necessarily want to over-explain them, but I also want to explain at least enough to show you that it's really original. It's not something I've seen before, and I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to cooking mini games. I like them about, mini games. I'm not a huge MMO dude, but when I've played MMO dudes, I slip into the, cooking roasts for the team and potions and all that sort of stuff. I like that, right? So this entire game is built around that. Essentially, you collect recipes. That's probably the most important loot currency progression anything as far as a self-centered mentality goes. As you level up your relationship with other members of the village, they in turn are going to give you more recipes, right? So it's not that you experiment to figure out what goes with what. You have a set template, and sometimes it will have very strict rules, like it might be a rhubarb pie, so it has to have rhubarb in it, right? Or other things like pies, for example, will probably have flour or cream or what have you. So there are some things that make a lot of sense. You get into stews and that, you start to get things like fish, but like the designation is fish. You can put whatever bloody fish you want in there. Likewise, maybe a certain amount of vegetables, or I think you're probably getting the idea. The recipes exist as a blueprint. Some are stricter than others. And the ingredients you put in will have a star rating. Most things are just 1, getting up to 2 stars. So I think 3 stars might actually be the maximum, just because you get a lot of extra stars from other peripheral parts of the cooking process. But I can't be sure because there is still more game here. When I've hung it up now, there's cooking clubs and the main story is ticking along, and we're building a wolf's head to put on the main gate for the county assessor to come by and judge whether we're a village or not. So like I'm involved. I'm enjoying it immensely, and there's still a lot more to go. But yeah, so maybe ingredients go higher than 3 stars, but I wouldn't think so. So you get your ingredients, you put them in. The blueprint, like let's say it's got 4 parts to the blueprint. What it will actually do is split a star into 4 components. and each thing will fill out a quarter. So if you have a 4-component stew, right? It's got fish, 2 vegetables, and I don't know, bloody hazelnut or something like that. Hazelnut fish stew, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't eat that. But each of those, if they were 1 star, will contribute together to make 1 full star, a quarter each, right? If it has 5 ingredients, it splits into 5. So it cheats a little bit. So the most you're only really going to get is 1 or 2 stars from ingredients. You mix them together. In the beginning, you've only really got like a mixing pot and a frying pan. I've unlocked an actual proper mixing pot. I suppose the core thing is just the bowl that you put everything in. And there are more things from the cooking club that I'm doing that you can unlock. It looks like maybe there's 2 or 3 other things that you can unlock. And you dice up your food, and essentially it reflects how mushed the food is from chunky down to puree. And there is a target on a sort of little 2D matrix in the corner of where you want to get it. And that is the chunkiness of the dish. And that's imposed against how crisp or tender it is. And again, like I said, say you chuck things in the frying pan, you'll crisp it up. So you're trying to zero this 2D grid and trying to get the ingredients to match up as close to the marker as possible. And if you do, that'll get an extra star rating as well. So there's this nuance to mixing and matching recipes and ingredients and deciding, there are times where you're not going to put your 2-star bloody tomato in the mix because it's not really going to push the dish further. Maybe you hold on to that into your pantry for a rainy day. And talk about pantry. As it fills up, it starts to populate with more and more things, and that gives a real sense of progression. I've got my entire pantry just full of shit. It's just full of so much beautiful food and meats hanging up and curing on the wall, and oh my God, I'm very proud. Very proud of my pantry. The rest of my house I don't give a crap about. There's a whole decorating minigame, but it's more of a peripheral life sim necessity or stand-in. Like, it doesn't reward you, not that I can tell. And, part of it appeals a little bit because you've got your serving tables where people sit down. You could lay down forks and knives and plates, I suppose, if you really wanted to get into it. But again, there's no immediate gameplay feedback loop. It doesn't tie into anything. So my place has fallen apart. It's an absolute shithole. The only thing that matters is my kitchen and my pantry and my garden. And that's cool. You have little garden beds and they have adjacency bonuses to different fruits and veggies that they get along with. And that's how you get a higher star rating yield in your veggies. And as far as fish, the fishing minigame is fine. And it's a pretty good source of income because making money is tricky. People won't buy your meals. You just make the meals to level them up and then they'll give you recipes, which is fine. But I kind of like that you can't just God mode the economy, which you probably can in a life sim thing. I feel like that's one of the hidden complaints about this game that a lot of people that are pro-life sim, that aren't getting swept up in the controversy, but then you do see some reviews coming out going, maybe it's a bit shallow or this, that, and the other. No, I think, honestly, the game is restrained, intentionally so, and it stops you from basically just finding one corner of the 15 different gameplay mechanics of the village and exploiting the shit out of it to get $1 bazillion. And I'm not trying to necessarily judge, but you look at someone who plays Stardew Valley and go, show me your game file. And they'll show you a 500-hour save where there's Scrooge McDuck, and they don't even realize that they are the antithesis of the setup of the corporate overreach and money men from the Stardew Valley game. But anyway, I digress further. Something about looking into the void, right? At least in this, it's kind of hard to really get a runaway economy going. Making money's tricky and kind of time-consuming and labor needed, so you have to decide what of your food yield are you actually going to sell back out at market. And the truth is, you probably don't want to sell much of it at all because you want to keep it for recipes. So maybe you do a lot of fishing and you sell that in turn, just enough to buy some seeds and some bits and pieces, maybe some eggs to trade for baking grease or something like that. So, you still stay mired in the low-level trade economy because you don't become this multi-millionaire dude lording it over everyone else. And then there's sort of hidden cooking mechanics behind. I ran away from it, but we'll come back to it briefly. Like, there are, I think, about 5 different taste profiles: sweet, sour, bitter, spicy, and salty, right? And there's a matrix in your cooking book where combining them together, specifically 2 flavors on their own, will then in turn create another star profile. And then you mix this on top of maybe you're cooking a meal for someone or a group of people, and they will send a letter because it's all very prim proper, and you invite them for tea, and then they'll respond and they'll tell you what they're feeling. They'll give you a little limerick, a little rhyme. saying, oh, I'm feeling like something salty or spicy, right? And so you prepare a meal. You want to make sure that that flavor is the dominant flavor. So let's say you've got 4 ingredients and they all have different flavors. Well, you try and mix and match that in when you put the ingredients in. And some things are flavorless, like flour or milk on its own, cream, I guess they call it. And then, when you're throwing things in the frying pan, you can throw spices in. That sort of baking grease I was talking about might allow you to transform one of the flavors to salty instead of, I don't know, let's say we throw some tomatoes and they're sweet and they all have color affixes and all that. So it's very easy to read. So you throw that, tomato in the frying pan, you throw the baking salt in there or whatever with it, and you transform that profile. And through that, what you would ultimately want to do is, I don't know, say you're getting a dude over and he wants something salty. You've got 4 ingredients. You probably want at least 2 of them to be salty, so they're dominant. But the other 2, you want to try and keep them the same as well, so maybe sweet. So then the final recipe comes out as a mixture of 2 ingredients only, or 2 flavor profiles, I don't know what you call them, salty and sweet, and that creates, if they mix together, some things don't, right? I think like bitter and sour don't go together. I can't quite remember, right? There's a couple that don't work, but as long as you combine 2 of them together, that adds another star, right? And so I think where the game's going is getting 3-star ingredients with really well maintained yields and leveled up fishing gear, mixed in with correct preparation and texture through frying, mixing, chopping, dicing, etc. to get an extra star, and then a mix of the correct flavor profile, all bringing that up to 5 stars maximum, and making that dish a specific flavor that is favored by the dude that you're serving it to. It's actually very complicated, and I really like it. I haven't seen anything like it before, and that's why I've chosen to focus most of my time talking about this on that, because that's something I feel like people brushed over. Maybe they don't even get it, or they don't care. I don't know how you couldn't care. It's all this game is about. Like, there's a lot of busy work talking to villagers and getting to know them and all that, but it's all pretty entry-level stuff. Don't get me wrong, I've become quite attached to all the villagers. I like them, not all of them, not the bearded lady dwarf. Like, did you have to put that in? Every other property everywhere just leaves female dwarfs not in the Lord of the Rings. The running joke is that they're hidden away in their minds. But I guess, fuck it. You're already torpedoing your own game. You might as well smash it as hard as possible. Also, it doesn't help that the lady dwarf is also that trendy faux autistic, the modern movement. People have figured out if they call themselves autistic just because they're a bit socially spasticated and they haven't been told no and they don't know how to respond to it properly and have public tantrums, that they can extract social credit by having that on their, LinkedIn profile, that they're neurodivergent. If you've ever met someone that's actually truly cripplingly autistic, 1, they wouldn't tell you they are because they're too fucked that they don't know that they are. But 2, you wouldn't go around pretending, fetishizing it for yourself. Anyway, I digress. But look, all in all, there's a really fun game under here, right? And if I was part of the dev team, maybe they end up watching this video or something. I am sympathetic because the dudes on the tools designing, building, and creating this game have done and made something really wonderful. I think it's quite lovely that it's absolutely getting slammed, stomped, shamed, because the company was stupid enough at the management level to try and jump on this modern influence train, and they managed to torpedo a wonderful game. And it's just absolutely tragic that I reckon a lot of the good worker ants that do 90% of the hard work on this game and keep their mouth shut, their head down, and try not to lose their job, these poor pricks have been wrapped up in kind of a devastating project. So yes, it's a great game. Yes, you're probably not going to buy it because you're wrapped up in the cultural back and forth surrounding this game. Either you're not buying it on principle or you're some Reddit fucking creeper that supports this decisions, but you don't have any money to buy the game in the first place. So does that even matter anyway? And yeah, it's a great tragedy, but at the same time, as I titled the previous video, you get what you deserve and you reap what you sow. Kind of fitting for a farming, cooking type game. Anyway, that's my review. I think it's really great. And if you've made it this far and you can reconcile all the other peripheral stuff, much like I have, right? I'm aware of the stuff, but it doesn't really faze me that much. And maybe pick it up, have a go. I had a gay old time. It's great fun. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.